Welcome back, 12s, to another episode of 12th Man Up. We are finally here. We are finally watching football again. It's only preseason, but it's still exciting to watch. So much to talk about this previous preseason game that happened on Saturday. One thing I want to point out is I believe this preseason game was a lot different than all the other preseason games uh, because of the fact that both sides, quarterbacks were fighting for starting positions. You had Geno Smith, you had Drew Lock, you had Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, and then the new quarterback, I believe it was Pickett, that was fighting for a starting position as well. So there was a lot of quarterback competition trying to show how talented these guys were, and it made it all that more competitive. Today we're going to just be talking about how well Seattle performed overall, where they did well, and where they struggled. So the question of the day is, did the Seahawks' overall performance meet your expectations? Feel free to comment below what you guys think. For me, I got mixed expectations. I mean, there were things we did well on and things we did really poorly on, and that's what we're going to go over today. So the biggest issue that we had, and any Seahawks fan watching the game knows that the biggest issue that we had was tackling. We could not tackle these players. You could almost make the argument that the reason why we lost was because we couldn't tackle. We couldn't finish those tackles. So we're going to go over the defense, the offense, even the special teams a little bit, specific players, and talk about how well they performed and where they did good and where they did poor. So starting off with the defense, just because they were the first on the field, I actually feel like they did really good applying pressure to the quarterback in the pass plays. Whether it was Rudolph or Trubisky, they had to get the ball out quick. Our edge rushers did excellent, especially Boye Mafe, who did outstanding. We had 3 sacks on the day, and he got 2 of them. One of them being at a very big moment in the game that allowed us to get the ball back. Unfortunately, it didn't go our way, but Mafe is just showing the value he has, and I'm just really glad we picked him up in the draft. I believe it was Jones who got the other sack as well. He also did really good. He got 6 tackles on the day as well. So good for him. Got some good looks here on the defensive line. But something that they struggled with was they couldn't stop the run. Whenever they ran the ball, that Steelers offensive line would just push them back. And those running backs would be able to get through to the linebackers and the corners, relying on them to make the tackles. And they just weren't able to make those tackles at all, and that's why they scored on us so many times. And I think the worst part of it was our cornerbacks. And look, I understand that these aren't all our starters. Most of them probably aren't going to be our starters, but the key things, like the simple things you would think they would do well on, I just felt like our corners were getting picked on the whole time, the entire game, whether it was Bryant, Woolen, or Coleman. Coleman, on the Steelers' first drive, he got beat in man coverage to get the Steelers into the red zone. And then right after that, they went back into his area where he was in zone coverage, and he was beat into a wide-open Steeler for a touchdown. So that wasn't good. Woolen and Bryant got picked on by Pickens, and that was unfortunate. Pickens, that wide receiver from the Steelers, is going to have a good year. But the Steelers' overall offense were able to control the clock. They had one drive that lasted 8 minutes and 21 seconds. They were in full control on offense, and they did this by running the ball a lot. They took Pete Carroll's philosophy and applied it to their game. They just ran the ball, controlled the clock, and they were in control. And that's why they were on the field most of the time. So a lot of things to fix up on the defense, but also some good things to look at as well. Now, moving on to the special teams, this is where we were pretty sloppy too. We had a dropped punt, I believe it was by Fuller, that almost gave it back to the Steelers on like the 5 or 10 yard line. And then also when we punted it, the Steelers punt returner, Sims, was able to return it for 38 yards. It's the same issue. We're just not able to tackle. And then Myers, his first field goal kick, he got lucky and hit it off the post. That could just be your first game jitters, maybe. I don't know. But we got lucky with that hit off the post. Some things to fix up on special teams, of course. And look, It's the first preseason game, obviously. We have things we need to clean up. I'm not going to give these guys too much of a hard time. I'm hoping that the next game that we'll have these things to fix up, that we will tackle better. Now moving on to the offense, starting with Geno. He did really good. He struggled in the pocket a little bit. You gotta love it out here. I'm just getting gnats everywhere in my face right now, so this is just fantastic. And I hope you guys are enjoying the outside noise as well. No, but anyways, we're going back to Geno. Geno, I believe he did okay. I'm not saying he did poorly. He struggled in the pocket a little bit. Whenever the pressure would apply and his reads weren't there, he would start to panic and scramble a little bit. And then he would end up getting sacked, and that just didn't go too well. But what he did do good on was throwing the ball on the run. I believe he did absolutely well doing that. Whenever he would roll out or do a play-action play, he did really good getting the ball out to like Fant. He had 2 passes to Fant that were actually really good. Unfortunately, one of the passes, Fant couldn't keep both of his feet in, but I believe he was pretty accurate, especially on some of those deep balls. He wasn't able to throw any touchdowns in. He really struggled to get completions on third down, unfortunately, but he actually ran the ball in for a touchdown at one point, so he was able to score, which is good. And at that point in the game, offensively, we went like 0-4 on third down. We weren't able to get that third down completion, to get that first again. And I'm not saying Geno is all. Not all the blame goes to him. Bo Melton, one of our wide receivers, he dropped the pass on a 5-yard slant that could have easily gotten us a first down. I also feel like the play calling wasn't anything special at all. They were a little bit too predictable. I understand if Pete Carroll is testing out his players, and seeing how well they can do executing certain plays, but I'm just hoping that he is saving some good plays for when the season actually starts, because this better not be how the play calling goes. We got to change it up a little bit. On third down, a couple times we tried to do a bubble play, which went nowhere. On a 3rd and 12, Geno threw it to Parkinson for 5 yards. That went nowhere. And then we tried a sweep, which didn't go anywhere. And on one of the plays, we tried running the ball on a 3rd and 1 after running the ball twice. They knew we were running the ball. And maybe in that situation, Pete Carroll was testing if Walker could be that third down guy to get it in. But it just wasn't creative. It was a run up the middle play, and it didn't work at all. Now, moving on to our running backs. This is one thing that was actually really good, that we actually performed really well on. All of the running backs did excellent. One after the other, they outperformed each other. After Walker came in, I was like, wow, it's going to be hard to top that. And then Homer came in, and he topped that. And then Dallas came in, and he topped that. So it was a fun game to watch. It shows that our O-line was able to create gaps for us. And I'll get into the O-line in just a second. But all 3 running backs were able to average 6 yards a carry, which is really good. All 3 of them. I mean, DJ Dallas himself had 10 rushes for 73 yards. What I liked about watching from Dallas is I'm kind of getting this Marshawn Lynch vibe. His style of running reflects that. And it just gets me a little bit excited that we have this running back depth, because we don't even have Rashad Penny playing right now. So it is exciting to see that. And moving on to the offensive line, they did create those gaps for the running backs. And that's why we were able to break into the secondary and force the corners to make tackles on us, and that took us downfield a lot, making it easier on Geno and Locke. And Cross and Lucas, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas are 2 of the offensive lines that we picked up today. Not today. We picked up these offensive linemen in the draft, and they did excellent. They really held their own, and it wasn't like they were getting pushed around at all. They were performing really well. I'm hoping that these guys will be able to perform well against the starters come the first week. And on the play that Geno was sacked, that was his fault. That was because he was holding on to the ball for too long, and he got sacked for 6 yards. So you can't blame the offensive line for that one. Now moving on to Drew Lock. I do believe Drew Lock performed a little bit better than Geno Smith. He was comfortable in the pocket, even as it started to break down a little bit. he also passed really well on the run. He showed his athletic ability, being able to scramble and throw the ball accurately. He hit Parkinson, our tight end, from 25 yards into the end zone, like a perfect throw into his hands. That would have been a touchdown if Parkinson was able to hold on to that ball. He just threw pretty accurately. And unfortunately, Parkinson couldn't hold on to the ball. But overall, Drew Lock had 2 touchdowns, and he was able to have a 2-point conversion. So, in my opinion, Drew Lock won this quarterback competition. And we'll see. Obviously, we have 2 more weeks of preseason, and we'll see how well these quarterbacks play again. But I think as of right now, Drew Lock deserves the starting position. Now, this preseason game was fun to watch. We obviously had a lot of struggles. The tackling was the most frustrating issue, but we get to see our strengths and weaknesses and where to capitalize. Watching Pete Carroll's post-game interview, he understands the issues. He knows what to work on, and he's just going to keep developing these players. So there are things to be optimistic about. The corners need to start picking on the receivers instead of it being the other way around. I believe that is probably one of the biggest issues is our cornerbacks, because no matter how much pressure we're applying on the defensive line, those quarterbacks are able to throw those balls to wide open receivers. At one point in the game, a Steelers wide receiver just ran an easy 10-yard out, and the cornerback was 5 yards off and had no issue catching the ball. We're not applying enough pressure on these wide receivers. I think we need to be more aggressive in the cornerback position. Also, the play calling. I'm hoping that Shane Waldron and Pete Carroll are saving some good play calls for the season, because there was nothing special about these play calls at all. They were predictable, and that's why we weren't able to convert on third down a lot. But, it is only the first preseason game. We got a lot more to go to. So let me know what you guys think about this previous game, and also let me know what you guys think are going to happen against the Bears. Seattle will be hosting the Bears Thursday. I believe it's going to be around 5 o'clock, and it should be an exciting game. And I'm interested to see how that goes. Until then, go Hawks. I'll see you guys around.